When we think of Roman soldiers, images of disciplined legions, clashing with barbarians, or constructing magnificent siege works often come to mind. We envision heroes facing down overwhelming odds, their courage unwavering against the fiercest foes of the ancient world. They conquered vast empires, built an unparalleled military machine, and their exploits are legendary. But beneath the polished armor and the unwavering discipline, there lay a profound, pervasive fear that overshadowed any enemy on the battlefield. It wasn't the Germanic tribes, the Parthian cavalry, or the elephants of Hannibal that truly kept these hardened warriors awake at night. The real terror was far more insidious, often unseen, and relentlessly present within their own ranks and daily lives. Imagine a legionary, having survived countless skirmishes, perhaps even a major pitched battle. He's a veteran, scarred but alive. You'd think his greatest concern would be the next encounter with a formidable enemy. Yet, historical records and archaeological findings paint a starkly different picture. The mortality rates from combat, while significant, were often dwarfed by other, less glorious threats. These hidden dangers were a constant companion, a silent killer that stalked Roman camps, marched alongside the legions, and infiltrated their very bodies, leaving devastation in its wake. This unseen adversary was far more indiscriminate and relentless than any human opponent, striking down both the green recruit and the seasoned centurion with equal impunity. The primary cause of death and fear for Roman soldiers, eclipsing all others, was disease. Life in a Roman legion, despite its advanced organization, was a breeding ground for every conceivable ailment. Crowded camps, often located near stagnant water sources, poor sanitation, and the lack of basic medical knowledge turned every encampment into a potential epidemic zone. Dysentery, malaria, typhoid, and various respiratory infections swept through the ranks with horrifying efficiency. A single contaminated water source or an outbreak in a densely packed barracks could decimate an entire cohort in a matter of weeks, sometimes killing more men than a major military campaign. The fear of succumbing to a painful, debilitating illness, far from home and surrounded by suffering comrades, was a constant, gnawing dread. Beyond disease, the sheer brutality of Roman military life itself contributed significantly to a soldier's fears. The discipline was legendary, but it was also incredibly harsh. Flogging, decimation, and summary executions were not uncommon for infractions ranging from cowardice to insubordination. Imagine knowing that a moment of weakness, a lapse in judgment, or even just bad luck, could result in you being beaten to death by your own comrades, or 1 in 10 of your unit being executed. This wasn't just punishment, it was a terrifying constant reminder of the absolute power held by your superiors, a power that could end your life just as swiftly and mercilessly as any enemy blade. The fear of displeasing a centurion or a legate was very real and often overshadowed the fear of battle. Furthermore, the constant threat of accidents and injuries, often far from any proper medical attention, was a daily reality. Building roads, constructing fortifications, digging trenches, and even routine training exercises were fraught with danger. A slip of the axe, a collapsing trench, a poorly maintained tool, or a misstep during a march could lead to a broken limb, a deep gash, or a crushing injury. Without modern antibiotics or sterile surgical practices, even a minor wound could quickly turn gangrenous and fatal. The fear of a debilitating injury, which would not only end a soldier's career but also leave them a burden and potentially lead to a slow, agonizing death, was a pervasive anxiety, particularly for those far from home and family. The arduous marches themselves were another significant source of suffering and fear. Legionaries were expected to cover vast distances, often carrying upwards of 60 pounds of gear, including armor, weapons, tools, and rations, in all weather conditions. Exhaustion, dehydration, frostbite, heatstroke, and severe foot injuries were common. These marches weren't just physically demanding, they were mentally draining, pushing soldiers to their absolute limits. The fear of collapsing from fatigue, falling behind, or becoming too ill to continue, knowing the potential consequences of being left behind or disciplined, added an immense psychological burden to every step of a long campaign. Even the food, or lack thereof, presented its own terrors. While Roman legions were renowned for their logistical capabilities, supplying an army of thousands in hostile territory was a monumental challenge. Rations could be inconsistent, of poor quality, or simply spoil. Malnutrition, food poisoning, and scurvy were real threats, weakening soldiers and making them more susceptible to disease. The gnawing hunger, the uncertainty of the next meal, and the fear of a food shortage leading to starvation were constant anxieties, especially during sieges or prolonged campaigns far from supply lines. A legionary might survive battle only to starve weeks later. Beyond the physical hardships, the psychological toll of prolonged military service was immense. Constant exposure to violence, death, and the grim realities of war, combined with the strict discipline and often monotonous routine, led to significant mental strain. While not recognized as PTSD in ancient times, the symptoms of trauma, depression, and anxiety would have been widespread. The fear of madness, of breaking under the relentless pressure, or of simply losing one's will to live, was a silent and terrifying struggle for many. These internal battles, though invisible, could be just as debilitating as any physical wound or disease, eroding a soldier's ability to cope and survive. The omnipresent threat of being captured was another deeply rooted fear. While some cultures might offer a dignified death in battle, Roman military culture viewed capture with immense dread. Being taken prisoner by barbarians often meant torture, slavery, or a gruesome public execution. The shame associated with capture, even if it meant survival, was profound for a Roman citizen and soldier. The fear of losing one's freedom, one's honor, and facing an unknown, horrifying fate at the hands of an enemy, was a powerful motivator in battle, often driving soldiers to fight to the death rather than risk capture. It was a fear that transcended physical pain. Even within the structured military hierarchy, the fear of an unfair trial or capricious judgment from a superior officer was a constant underlying anxiety. A commander could be bribed, prejudiced, or simply incompetent, leading to unjust accusations or overly harsh punishments. The Roman legal system, while advanced, was not always immune to personal influence or military expediency. For a soldier, their fate often rested entirely in the hands of their officers, and the fear of being arbitrarily condemned for an offense they didn't commit, or for a minor infraction misinterpreted, was a very real and unsettling prospect in a world where justice could be swift and brutal. Finally, the fear of losing one's military pay or pension, which was often the only prospect of a comfortable retirement, hung heavy over every legionary. Service was long, often 20 to 25 years, and the reward was land, citizenship for auxiliaries, or a significant financial bonus. Any significant disciplinary action, a dishonorable discharge, or death from disease before completing service, could mean losing everything they had sacrificed decades for. This fear of ending up destitute, after dedicating their entire adult lives to the empire, was a powerful motivator, driving them to endure hardships and conform to brutal discipline, lest they forfeit their hard-earned future. So, while Roman soldiers were indeed formidable warriors, their internal battles were often far more terrifying than any external foe. The constant shadow of disease, the harshness of discipline, the ever-present threat of accidents and starvation, the psychological toll of war, and the fear of a broken future all combined to create a daily existence fraught with anxiety. It wasn't the enemy across the field that was their most feared opponent, it was the unseen, the insidious, the everyday terrors of life in the Roman military. These were the true adversaries that tested their courage, not just in battle, but in every moment of their service. Understanding these hidden fears gives us a more profound appreciation for the resilience and fortitude of the Roman legionary. Their bravery wasn't just about facing an armed enemy, but about enduring an environment where death and suffering lurked around every corner, often from within their own ranks. It's a reminder that heroism often lies not just in glorious combat, but in the quiet, daily struggle against overwhelming odds, both visible and invisible. What do you think was the most terrifying aspect of Roman military life? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more insights into the ancient world. Thanks for watching.